Some moments make the fan base look towards Santa Clara and feel one truth. This season might come down to whether this team has the courage to trust people a lot of fans have already counted out. Jake Brendel has turned into that test. The offensive line, Brock Purdy, Ricky Pearsall, George Kittle, all of it connects back to one question that feels too emotional to treat like a cold debate. Are the 49ers still building a team tough enough to survive January? Stay with me, subscribe to 49ers Express, and let's get into it with no sugarcoating. The weirdest part about Jake Brendel is that this fan base has never viewed him as a comfortable answer. Almost every year, that same concern comes back. Don't the 49ers need someone younger, more explosive, more well-known, and easier to sell as a real upgrade? Then that PFF number drops in and forces everybody to pause before repeating the same automatic criticism. His grade has improved over the last 3 seasons, and that is not some tiny note. He is one of only 4 players over 30 whose grade improved in all 3 of those seasons. That shifts the entire conversation, because Brendel did not come in as some prized prospect. He was undrafted, spent time in Miami, bounced through practice squads, sat out in 2020, arrived in San Francisco as a quiet gamble in 2021, got cut, and only after all of that did he get a real chance to start in 2022. Since then, he has been the starting center for 4 straight seasons. Not a quick flash, not a one-week accident. It has been survival, adjustment, and growth inside a system that demands fast reads, communication, angles, timing, and trust with the quarterback. That is where the tension lives. Fans look at Brendel and see the resume. A player who needed a long time to settle in, who will play this next season at 34, and who spent more of his career fighting just to make a roster than being seen as an established name. The coaching staff sees something different. They see a setter who understands Kyle Shanahan's structure, who does not have to be taught from zero, who knows Brock Purdy's rhythm, who organizes protection, and who keeps improving at an age when plenty of players start sliding. I get the frustration. In San Francisco, the offensive line is not just some technical side conversation. It is the protection around the entire dream. If the pocket breaks down, Purdy is the one who pays for it. If the middle loses strength, the run game loses its identity. But there is another truth that needs to be faced. Brendel, with all the limits of how people see him publicly, has given this team more stability than a lot of fans want to admit. The next layer is where it gets uncomfortable. He will be a free agent after the season. He will be older, and the 49ers still do not have a clear successor waiting on the roster. If he plays well again, Santa Clara could end up staring at a decision nobody wants to deal with. Extending a veteran the fans keep trying to replace. And maybe that is the real question here. Not whether Brendel deserves respect, but whether the faithful are ready to accept that respect does not always show up with glamour attached. That Brendel conversation opens a bigger door. Because if center has become a case for continuity, the left side of the line still carries the kind of uncertainty that makes any contender fan feel a little tight in the chest. 4 spots look pretty much set entering 2026, but left guard is still sitting there, exposed, waiting for an answer between Carver Willis, Connor Colby, and Robert Jones. And this is not a small competition just because it does not create flashy headlines. Sometimes the hole that decides a season begins exactly where nobody is screaming in June. Carver Willis still has developing to do. Connor Colby still has to prove he can turn late-round promise into dependable starting play. Robert Jones brings experience, but he does not walk into the building as the kind of solution that makes the whole room breathe easier. So when Mo Moton from Bleacher Report brings up Kevin Zeitler as a fit for the 49ers, I do not treat that like some random fantasy. I treat it as a direct question for Santa Clara. Do you want to discover the answer in camp, or do you want to buy stability before the NFC West sends the bill? Zeitler is 36, and that is the obvious concern. Nobody is acting like age does not matter. A roster that already has to manage important veterans cannot simply keep stacking older names and call that a real plan. But the conversation gets more interesting because Zeitler is not just an old name. He has started 213 games in his career, has posted an offensive grade of at least 71.6 from PFF in each of the last 5 seasons, and in 2024 he put up an 86.5, his best mark since 2014. That changes the whole tone. For an offensive line that has to protect Brock Purdy and power Kyle Shanahan's run game, a veteran guard who can walk in and play may be more valuable than a nice developmental bet still learning how to survive snap after snap. And there is another detail you cannot ignore. This division now has Myles Garrett. When you know you are going to face monsters up front, left guard stops being a depth chart debate and becomes a survival issue. The cleanest way to read it might be this. Zeitler would not need to be the future. He could be the bridge. Let Willis grow, let Colby compete, but do not make Brock Purdy pay for someone else's development process. For an average team, patience can look like a virtue. For the 49ers, with real ambition, too much patience can turn into wasted opportunity. If the offensive line is the base that keeps the season from cracking, Ricky Pearsall is one of those pieces that can change the entire temperature of this offense. There comes a point where high draft talent cannot stay forever in the soon category. His story has had real obstacles, human obstacles, heavy ones. Getting shot months after being drafted is not some little footnote. Then came the hamstring issue, managed reps, a PCL injury that disrupted continuity, and still, when he was available in 2025, he showed signs that should not be ignored. 36 catches, 528 yards, no touchdowns in 9 games. On paper, that does not scream star. But the evaluation cannot stop at the surface. He averaged 14.7 yards per reception, tied for 12th among wide receivers with at least 50 targets including the playoffs, and posted 1.68 yards per route run, 34th in that same group. That points to one thing. When the ball got there and his body allowed it, there was efficiency. The issue was consistency, rhythm, health, the chance to stack weeks together. Now the context pushes Pearsall right into the middle of the room. George Kittle is trying to return from a torn Achilles suffered in January, and the logistics of opening the season against the Rams in Australia make everything even more complicated. Even if Kittle can play in Week 1, he turns 33 in October and is coming off a massive injury. The 49ers cannot just ask him to carry the offense like nothing happened. That would feel beautiful emotionally, but it would be way too risky strategically. That is where Pearsall steps in. Fansided put him among the up-and-coming names who could become household names soon, with the idea that he will finally get the chance to take on a major role in the receiver room. I like that read, but it comes with pressure. Opportunity in San Francisco is not a gift, it is responsibility. Brock Purdy needs separation, timing, trust on third down, and someone who can turn Shanahan's design into real yards. So I want to hear from the faithful. Do you look at Pearsall and see the breakout coming? Or do you still need to see health and consistency before you truly believe? Because this is the kind of debate that shapes how the fan base sees the offense before the ball is even in the air. If Pearsall gets through a clean offseason, spending more time on the field than in rehab, the path is right there. And maybe, after all those interruptions, his moment does not arrive with fireworks. Maybe it arrives as an answer. Then we get to George Kittle, and the whole conversation starts carrying different weight. With Kittle, it is never only about statistics. It is contact after the catch. It is a block that feels like a message. It is energy that jumps through the sideline. He is the kind of player who does not only show up in the box score, but when you do look at the numbers, they begin telling a story that is too heavy to ignore. Kittle enters this season with 8,008 career receiving yards, 10th all-time among tight ends. That alone puts his name in a special hallway of NFL history. But now he has a real chance to climb. He needs 538 yards to pass Jimmy Graham, 585 to pass Zach Ertz, and 676 to catch Greg Olsen. If he gets there, he could finish the season 7th all-time at the position. And look at the power of that detail. Kittle has topped 676 yards in 6 of his 9 seasons. The only exceptions were his rookie year and 2 injury-shortened seasons. The obstacle is the Achilles. You cannot talk about all-time rankings like the body is a spreadsheet. Kittle is trying to come back from a serious injury, and the 49ers have to balance ambition with intelligence. The emotional instinct is to put him on the field and let him run through defenders like he always has. The colder read says San Francisco needs him in December and January, not only for a pretty Week 1 headline. That is exactly why this record chase hits so hard. Kittle is not just trying to come back, he is trying to return while closing in on giants. And inside 49ers history, the impact gets even crazier. He is 3rd in franchise receiving yards and only 565 away from catching Terrell Owens. Jerry Rice is another universe, and nobody has to pretend otherwise. But passing T.O. for 2nd in receiving yards in team history would be a massive mark for a tight end. And maybe that is what separates Kittle from so many others. He has never been just a receiving weapon. He became an identity. He gave Shanahan's offense a physical face, helped define the tone of an era, and still has a chance to climb lists that felt reserved for a different kind of player. If his body cooperates, this season can turn his comeback into something bigger than recovery. It can become a legacy chapter. In the end, these 4 stories are saying the same thing through different doors. Brendel is asking for respect without flash. Zeitler represents the temptation to buy security right now. Pearsall carries the chance to become a real offensive answer. Kittle reminds everyone that legacy is also racing against time, against the body, and against the urgency to win. That is what makes this season so emotional. The 49ers are not building some nice story for a distant future. They are trying to protect a window that is still beating. So leave a like, subscribe to 49ers Express, and stay here with us, because Santa Clara still has a lot of heavy decisions ahead.